Have you ever wanted to live something else? Maybe there's not any particular reason as to why, it's just a culmination of many somethings that drives that desire in all of us. That wish to be special, to be the hero of our own adventure, to find our place in a world that was just waiting for someone like us to click it. Well, what if I told you there was a way to experience just that? Well, too bad. Have fun being a vending machine. Isekai is an oversaturated genre that caters to surface-level ideas that do the bare minimum of hooking in viewers with the most stories, doing little to build upon the original concept, and instead falling back on tropes and cliches, inevitably removing any semblance of a unique story it may have had. There. I said it. No take gets as cold as that. I blame SAO for all of this. With that in mind, what makes Konosuba special? Let's roll it back. Konosuba, God's blessing on this wonderful world, begins with young neat Sato Kazuma leaving his room for the first time in days to purchase a game he had been eyeing. In classic isekai fashion, he witnesses a young girl about to be caught in a fatal accident, so he rushes in. For the first time in his quiet life, he springs into action, sacrificing himself to save another. But this was not where his story ended. For upon his demise, he awoke to the sight of a beautiful and elegant goddess in front of him, offering him a second chance in life as a reward for his valiant deeds, where he may make a name for himself as a hero of the land. Okay, we all know where this went. Konosuba's strength lies in one thing: subversions. It creates an expectation and completely pulls the rug from under you. And it does this over and over again. It's part of Konosuba's charm, comedy, and, well, entire identity. But it's almost a bit more than that. Let's keep a pin here for later and move on. Remember that life or death situation that Kazuma risked his life for? Yeah, no, that speeding truck was a tractor and the girl even had time to wave at the driver. Oh, and Kazuma died of shock. Then pissed himself. What about that elegant goddess, a shameless and prideful woman who wallows in her vices without a care in the world? And that new beginning spiel? Yeah, no, we're just sending as many people from Japan and hoping one of them takes care of the obligatory Demon King problem. And this series does this over and over and over again. Think Kazuma's gonna be some high-level warrior with a heart of gold, crazy powers, and insane charisma towards the opposite sex? Nope. Complete scum whose greatest stat is his luck and penchant for scheming. Ooh, look! A mage from a clan of mystical masterminds. I wonder what she'll bring to the table. That and arrogance, family issues, and plenty of poverty. Ooh, what about this high-level and staunch-looking crusader? Surely she'll be the vanguard of the team, bringing physical might on par with her golden moral code. Yeah, you get the point. Konosuba constantly does this, layering on subversions over and over again with its characters to the point that you begin to expect the subversions, since that's just what the series presents. Aqua is a goddess who's incredibly weak. Megumin is part of a class known for versatility that relies on one powerful but debilitating move. Darkness can't hit squat, and all of the Demon King's generals are pathetic in their own ways. Hell, even the story's version of an actual isekai protagonist isn't safe, as his ass is kicked by Kazuma using a low-level steel spell on him. After which he sexually harasses the guy's party members. Yeah, really subverting that heart of gold, beloved by women character trope, Kazuma. So, is that it? Is that all that makes Konosuba special? By taking the established tropes of the oversaturated isekai genre and turning them into jokes? That's all there is to it? Well, let's put a pin in that and discuss what exactly Konosuba is doing. It's a parody. But for a parody to even exist, it's contingent on having something to parody in the first place. And that's where we can talk about the isekai genre itself. And oh boy. To keep things short and sweet, but to add context to the next segment, isekai resembles romance as a genre in one aspect: tropes. Both isekai and romance are genres that are constantly receiving new entries each and every day, meaning certain patterns come to exist and dominate stories. This isn't exactly exclusive to just these two, but they are very evident in them because of the formerly established fact. Not only that, it's not to say tropes and cliches are inherently bad. They came to exist and become staples for a reason. They're useful writing tools to convey information and ideas quickly based on a viewer's prior knowledge of the genre. Sure, overuse and lack of creative application to one story can be a negative, but it's a tool. It's up to the storyteller to make sure it becomes a positive. But isekai and romances are, without a better word, infamous for their tropes. They are everywhere and can suck the life out of a possibly interesting concept. So of course, in response, people started criticizing these patterns, making fun of them, and judging series based on the presence of these tropes, not even on their utilization. Thus, it's not rare that series nowadays poke fun at these subtextual patterns, and with a bit of luck, even series entirely centered around the heckling of such stories come to exist. Which is where you might think Konosuba steps in. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, right? Konosuba is special because it's a parody in the sea of cliché, mass-produced isekais, differentiating itself by doing nothing but being a big joke we can laugh at. But that's where I'd like to go back to the pins we set earlier. Subversions, the lifeblood of Konosuba. And this is where this series really struck me, as I'm someone who actually saw Konosuba as just that, a parody. But after watching the series again and again, and having read the light novels, a realization came to me. Konosuba subverts its own subversions. What do I mean by this? Okay. Konosuba makes itself look like a joke, but then, out of nowhere, seamlessly, it does something that you don't expect from it. It begins to double down into becoming good. Let's start somewhere before we get into the plot idea. Remember when I said Konosuba really likes subverting your ideas of characters? Like, to the point you start to expect the opposite of what the genre usually does? It uses that in, honestly, a really impressive way. By making you expect the genre standards, and then training your brain to expect the series standards, it sets itself up to do something incredible. It subverts that expectation once again. Oh, so you thought Kazuma was just a piece of garbage with no redeeming qualities? Well, what about those times he showed a genuine love for adventure, vulnerability, and self-doubt that forced him to go and realize his own strengths, while also coming to live his imperfect but well-earned life? Does that sound like the Clash Zuma that the series first presented? How about Aqua, who we all know is a useless and prideful bum who arrogantly sees herself as immaculate while drowning in her vices? Well, she's also one hell of an artist who loves her followers, not because they give her strength, but because she cares for them and devotes her life to making them proud of the goddess they worship, all the while showing an incredible bond to Kazuma that they were naturally built up over the time they've spent together, despite their constant bickering. Doesn't that sound like way more than the joke she started as? Megumin? Sure, she remains the stubborn, proud, and brash mage of the group who, without exaggeration, can only perform one attack per day. But she also shows off her more ambitious side, the side that hopes to find her place in the world with her strength, something no one else has, as a way to honor the mentor who showed her this strength and to help her family live a better life. A journey for her to grow and find companions that could be proud of her. How's that for a one-note character? And even Darkness, the masochistic, lust-filled crusader, does this. For all her flaws and idiosyncrasies, she's incredibly humble and caring. She doesn't flaunt her nobility and does her very best in accommodating her team members, even being chosen by an actual god as a companion because of her kindness and prayers for a group of friends who could come to love and appreciate her not for her status, but for herself. And guess what? That wish was indeed granted. This is where suddenly Konosuba excels. Now, disclaimer, admittedly, these might not be too evident if you've only watched the anime and movie, but they are present in the later parts of the novels, and I do think bits and pieces of these aspects do leak into the already adapted versions. So I do hope this gives a bit of extra insight for anime onlys. Anyway, continuing on, Konosuba does something incredible by throwing two curveballs in a row. It makes you expect the classic isekai tropes and then throws that out of the window, handling you another ball and telling you, well, it's just a parody. Before suddenly a third ball hits the back of your head and now we're writing an actually good story with endearing and layered characters. This is what I love about Konosuba. But to really appreciate what lets it stand out, I'd like to take another detour and talk about the genre as a whole once again.
The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night.
Isekai and horror. Yeah, second weird comparison of the video. These two, I think, heavily rely on one thing when it comes to crafting a story: a really, really catchy hook. Just looking at popular horror films of recent, we can see that one thing many directors chase is that hook of sorts. Things like don't make noise or the monster gets you, or don't open your eyes or it will follow you no matter where you are, or that there are no laws during one night and complete anarchy is allowed. These sorts of high concept ideas fill the horror landscape in the same way such plots saturate the isekai genre. I mean, that's the entire reason a lot of isekais have their entire plot in the title of the story. It's so that the idea is easily communicable, very specific, and highly marketable. And it's not entirely the writer's fault. In a sea of so many rehashes and that time I got reincarnated as clones, everybody is trying to stay afloat by throwing every possible idea at the wall, whether it sticks or not. And this is a problem, or well, maybe more of a trend for both genres. Concept is chosen over substance. You no longer try to create something with depth and character, but instead create something that the masses will find interesting enough to watch, whether or not it has the quality in storytelling to retain an audience. This results in stories like a vending machine being the main character, or how about a pharmacist? Or hell, literally just an uncle. Though I have been told this one's actually kind of funny. And the sad thing is, some concepts actually do have potential, but instead they're wasted as the author perhaps struggled to build upon the original foundation of their story, falling for the many pitfalls and tropes set in stone by the genre over the course of its run. To further this point, I'd like to present the opposite. What happens when a story doesn't go for the high concept route and instead tells a story that prioritizes its substance over its concept's potential? Enter Mushoku Tensei. This anime strips the isekai genre to its bare minimum, well, at least by modern standards. There's very little fluff and very little much done to create a weird and out there concept. Instead, it's just a guy getting reincarnated in another world where magic exists. That's it. He starts off as a baby and slowly grows into an adult, learning the ways of the world and honing his skills to become stronger. That's it. He's adept, sure, but not overly so, and aside from his patented isekai harem, he really is just that. A guy in another world. And by stripping all of what bloated the isekai genre, by not relying on a concept that could be difficult to chase and instead grounding itself in a simple but effective plot where one could build interesting storylines, rich world settings, and layered characters, it succeeded. Sure, it's not perfect, but most people absolutely consider its writing a step above most of the other entries in the genre. And that's because its approach differed from the norm. That's not to say that this is always the correct methodology. Absolutely not. Without stories that try to challenge the norm and experiment with strange and unorthodox plotlines, we'd be living in a very boring world. But it is to say that balancing that with actual substance is important, and that something that looks good on the outside but is hollow within can become easily forgettable as a whole. And that kind of returns to Konosuba. Konosuba could have been just that. Another high concept story that just did one thing and nothing else. It could have just been that time I got reincarnated as a massive scumbag with a trash party. It could have just told that joke and kept repeating it over its run, but it didn't. It sort of began as one, I do agree on that point, but it removed itself from that as the story went on. Instead of substituting the necessary meat of a good story with jokes, tropes, and jokes about tropes, it actually added in character. It balanced out its concept with actual growth, with a proper story flow, emotional setups, and daring stakes. The story began to form itself into one about a genuine love for adventure and an appreciation for the family you have, however flawed they may be. It became a story about how Kazuma overcame his insecurities and came to become far more than the NEET he died as, finding happiness in his new life. About how Aqua's pride hid an incredible amount of compassion and a desire to be loved, or Megumin's ambition to become powerful to her own means, and Darkness's iron will yet humble love and contentment for her newly found family. And it does this, just as I said in the beginning, over and over again. It constantly subverted my expectations, the very expectations it formed when I first began watching it. And it was, pardon me for breaking character for a bit, genuinely fucking amazing. I love this series a lot, and I know that's probably making me a bit biased, but there's just something so satisfying about seeing these little idiots go on their silly adventures and for it to all make me feel so warm and fuzzy inside as I see them come to glow and bond over their misadventures. All the while, it started as a joke, making fun of trashy isekais. That is, for me at least, summarized in around 2,500 words. What makes Konosuba special?
振り抜けた山ばかりそんなこの街があんなにも嫌だったのに今ただ思いはますばかり
This essay has actually been on my mind for like 2 years now, and I've kind of been avoiding writing it for a myriad of reasons. But with the release of season 3 and it adapting my favorite volume from the novels, I thought it fitting that I'd finally start work on a script and drag my editor friend into the fray. I'm not entirely sure what I wrote made any sense, but I do hope you at least find it somewhat interesting. So yeah, thanks for tuning in.
ちゃんと帰るよ
Sup?
This is
I hate my life, man. It took us 2 weeks to
See, it
finish
would
this video.
see, it would have been funnier if you came in and just immediately opened up with I like anime moms as well. Who starts a conver
Okay.
Who starts a con
Look, man, don't get me started with anime moms, okay? This
Man,
this 20-minute video is gonna be like an hour.
he asked me for clips of like MILFs, so it's like, Nathan, half of these, half of this is porn.
Why don't they make more anime moms? Like, most of the time, the parents are out or they're just dead.
That's your
Yeah.
complaint. It's like you're on like you have a mal, you have a mal account. It's like every anime with a dead parent just has the lowest possible score. It's like the most boring conversation ever. It's just it's just tacked on at the end. God's sake. It put like fan service at this part, just like a bunch of it's like a bunch of milfs in bikinis. Like you look at like the viewer attention bar, the graph at the bottom is like it spikes at the
Yeah.
end.
No, I'm just gonna add like a Subway Surfers at the back,
This
like
Subway
on the
Sur-
left side.
Yeah, on the left side Subway Surfers, on the right side it's Family Guy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's-
Any episode, right?
yeah, it's perfect. Then we cut off right at the end, and that's it. It's perfect. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ending the recording.